Hi, you're 13. Welcome back. We're looking at core purpose of business activity. It's all about value added, which you've seen a wonderful video screencast from Mr. Rawat earlier, I hope, if it uploaded properly. So what are we talking about in terms of what is the main purpose, the core purpose of business activity? Well, business activity is about any activity carried out with the intention of providing products, which would include services that can be sold on to others, usually at a profit. So what are we doing? We're trying to take resources or inputs, so that could be raw materials, usually some human effort in the form of labour, and you turn them into an output which someone else, your customers, will be willing to pay for. So that's the whole idea about adding value. So you take something, you change it in some way, make it better in some way, and then you can charge a premium for doing so. So you can see here on the left hand side, this is just nicked straight out of your textbook, so apologies for that. But you know, land, labour, machinery, raw materials, those sorts of inputs or factors of production. It's transformed in some way into either tangible goods or services. Pretty basic diagram, I have to be honest. Right, okay, you could just do that. We've done that before. You can look in your notes for that. Okay, so value added is about sales revenue, or what you sell it for, minus the cost of goods and services bought in. So essentially, what's the cost you make it, subtracted from how much you charge the customer for it. Lots of different activities there which you've done most of before. So just to take it on from that sort of basic introduction there, we're going to dig a little bit deeper below the surface. We're going to look at these concepts and try and clarify what the difference is between these different terms here. When a firm, a big firm, I mean, we're talking about some of the most valuable firms in the FTSE 100, that is the UK's top 100 firms by market capitalisation or share value, essentially, total share value. When big firms like BP or HSBC, so BP is the oil exploration and refining firm, and HSBC, which is Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation, if they can make and sustain profits at a level that exceed the average, we call that a competitive advantage. So what is competitive advantage? Well, it's an advantage over your competitors, funny enough, but what it means is it allows you to attract and keep more customers than your rivals, and therefore you generate greater sales and profits. So it's really one-upmanship on your competitors. Two different types: cost advantage, differentiation advantage. Now there's some confusion about particularly cost advantage, so we're going to take a moment to dig into those. Cost advantage is the factors which exist which allow a firm to produce its goods or services at a lower cost than those of its rivals. Now, the confusion that exists here, or maybe the clumsiness is a better word rather than confusion, because I don't think many of you are confused by it. But the problem that we have is, if you get a question on this in exam, too often candidates will write about the fact that Tesco's has a cost advantage in that it sells its products cheaper. Well, that's true, but that's not necessarily, that doesn't have to be the case just because they have a cost advantage. If it has a cost advantage, it has two options. It has two options. It can either, because it's buying in its products or it's enjoying some kind of economy of scale, it can either maintain the same prices as its competitors or similar to its competitors and enjoy a higher profit margin, or it can cut its prices and maintain the same profit margins as it had before, which would mean that it would gain market share. It would essentially undercut its competitors and steal their customers as a result, quite legally and legitimately. So, just really what I said earlier, but that's just it visually stated there, maybe clearer. And it doesn't necessarily mean because you produce things at lower cost, that may be a result of the bulk buying or another economy of scale. It doesn't necessarily mean you have inferior quality, and it doesn't mean you have to charge lower prices just because you buy this stuff in cheaper. You could charge very similar prices to your competitors and just be happy to take more as profit, and your shareholders would certainly be happy with that. Economies of scale is just, well, this, don't worry about this diagram, this is from the economics textbook, but that's just the long run average cost curve. And the idea of this sloping down and then up again, this is the idea of economies of scale. So as we produce on a larger scale, our average cost or our unit cost is falling. Now, when we get past this point, this lowest point, we start to go up again. That would indicate diseconomies of scale. That would indicate that there's a factor here that's causing unit cost to actually rise as output continues to increase. So there's a sort of an optimal scale limit, which once we go beyond that, then we're starting to watch unit costs increase again. And obviously that's not ideal. That may be, as you know from your revision, due to communication problems, maybe between different countries. That may be because of coordination issues again, same sort of idea. It may even be motivational issues where staff are not as productive because they maybe don't feel part of a team, because they maybe just feel like employee 5791 rather than Dave from accounts, who everybody knows and thinks is the life and soul. The most obvious thing, and I've mentioned it already, is economies of scale. So you can negotiate bulk discounts, buying in massive quantities. You could also get financial economies of scale, which would mean that you could borrow money from the bank at a more competitive rate of interest than some of your smaller competitors. So essentially that's reducing your unit costs. And the other thing is economies of experience. So it basically, just to stick with Tesco for now, Tesco has been handling fresh fruit and vegetables for decades. So in terms of how efficiently they can manage that and minimize waste, they have all sorts of systems in place to track food, to keep food fresh, to stop it from going off, stop it from being misplaced, and maybe that's wasting more time, or it's sitting on a shelf somewhere where someone misplaced it in a warehouse or something. So anything that their experience has essentially allowed them to be more efficient, and again that knocks on and has an impact on lowering unit costs. You could also have superior technology. Again, we'll stick with Tesco's because, well, I'm with Tesco's now to the end of this presentation, frankly. But they may invest in up-to-date equipment. So really, we're getting into technical economies of scale. They should be able to use it effectively and should be able to produce then their goods, services more efficiently than firms using outdated technology. They can do it faster. And in fact, I was using an earlier version of Screencast-O-Matic earlier and found that it was taking too long to upload videos, so I updated the software and it seems to be working a little bit faster now. So I am taking advantage of superior technology, although not really in a competitive environment. Okay, you can think about how EasyJet can maintain a cost advantage over rival airlines. Hint, hint, buying fuel, things like that. Okay, now we've talked about cost advantage. Let's look briefly, because we're 9 minutes in, at differentiation advantage. Only the largest firms tend to be able to sustain a cost advantage over rivals in an industry. We're talking about the big four supermarkets can sustain that. Some of the discount retailers like Aldi and Lidl can do it, but you know, most other firms cannot secure that cost advantage. So how do you compete with the big boys? You don't try to compete on price. You try to compete on being different. It's your ability to separate yourself from the rank and file. Essentially, you may become a niche producer. A couple of ways you can do that. Create a unique selling point. So, a new feature of a product, it could be, for example, Sony a few years back introduced waterproof cameras, compact cameras. I don't know about their digital SLRs and those, but basically for people going on holidays or just wanting a small camera to put in your pocket if you're going to a wedding or something like that. Pretty high quality images, you know, all sorts of, I don't know how many megapixels, certainly upwards of 5 megapixels, so they're pretty good quality pictures. Anyway, you know, they brought in this feature, this unique selling point, which was their waterproof, which means if you're going on holiday, you're at the beach taking photos, you don't need to worry about the camera getting wet. You don't need to worry about being at the poolside, someone spilling a drink on the camera, or you know, even jumping in the pool with the camera. You don't need to worry about it breaking. You can actually do that. A lot of people take photos with the camera actually in the water, people jumping in, that sort of stuff. So that was a way of differentiating their product. Another way would be, for example, if a pharmaceutical company introduces a new drug, a new antacid drug with some kind of newly developed active ingredient which helps deal with heartburn or something like that, and you know, they have patent protection on it, so that makes their product unique. It works better than the competitors' products. That's a unique selling point. Another way to do it is with a strong brand. That means that, you know, it's essentially in the mind's eye of the consumer. They think it's different, therefore it is different to them, even if physically it may be very similar to other products. Think about jeans. Your parents will tell you about this all the time when you ask for expensive jeans. If you go down to a supermarket, again, I'm sorry we're back to supermarkets, but if you go to Asda and you buy a pair of George jeans, you know, your parents will say, oh, look, they're pretty much like, you know, those jeans you want, those expensive ones. If you want like, you know, Diesel or some other brand that I'm not familiar with. Anyway, you know, if your parents will try and tell you that the jeans from George are the same as the Diesel jeans, and you'll probably have some kind of a fit about that, but, you know, physically, they're pretty much right. They're similar fabric, they're similar stitching, and so on and so forth. But in your mind, those two products are miles apart. Okay, they're completely different, and therefore Diesel can justify a much higher price because they're charging for your association with their brand. They're charging you to be associated with that more exclusive brand. And the more different you can make it, the more different that the company can make it in the mind's eye of the consumer. And that may not be a physical difference, but through marketing and advertising, the higher the premium they can charge. Alright, so what are the benefits of branding? Making demand less sensitive to changes in price, so demand is less price elastic. Consumers will pay more. They will come back to that brand. They associate with that brand in their mind. They will return again and again and again to buy it. And also then, look at the likes of Apple. It's easier to launch new products off the back of the previous success. Okay, lots of things you can do there. Look over your notes. Enjoy.